These were the pillars so familiar to my blighted eyes. But now that I had begun to learn their true significance, I regarded the pillars' destruction with a new, enlightened sense of horror. And I questioned now whether Kain's simple refusal, his mere ambition, could truly have caused such devastation. I felt that some darker influence was at work here. As I approached, I discerned the spirit of Ariel, bound here now for more than a century.
Forever am I bound, hope abandoned, my spirit tethered to this place. What destroyed the circle could not touch me, for I was newly dead and beyond harm's reach. I alone was spared the descent into madness, and Kain alone was spared the pain of death. When Nepraptor's poison seized Kain even in the safety of the womb, much more than just his destiny was lost. All of Nosgoth lost balance. Consider us now, both of us less than we once were. I, pure but insubstantial, and Kain terribly real, but corrupted.
Your imprisonment here has deranged your spirit. You fixate on Kain because you believe he is the tether that binds you here. We both know he is not the author of your agony. The pillars were subverted by dark forces, invited by the Guardians themselves. The more I learn of your circle, the more I see a tangle of nested manipulations.
Kain handed them their victory. They sought to topple the pillars, and he was their willing instrument.
Or was he their unwilling pawn? Would it blunt your wrath to know that Kain's dilemma was calculated to bring the pillars down, regardless of the choice he made? And that the devastation would have been even greater had he chosen the path you would prescribe for him?
You are a subtle, deceitful creature. But your clever arguments do not absolve Kain. He must die for the pillars to be restored. There is no other way.
Then consider this more ominous possibility. What if Kain's death does not restore the pillars? Consider that it may simply be too late, that this world may be beyond redemption, and that you may be bound here eternally.
Why do you hound me, demon? You can see that I am captive here. Show me some mercy.
Like the mercy you showed your fellow Guardians when you set Kain on them? Or the mercy you showed Kain when you kept him ignorant of his destiny while you used him as the scourge of the Circle? Or perhaps like the mercy you showed your beloved Nepraptor when you made him Kain's first kill?
You are cruel. Why do you torment me?
I'm merely looking for answers, Ariel. Ah, very well. I'll leave you in peace. But know this about you and this purgatory from which you long to escape. You're merely at the threshold.
Raziel, the failed assassin. You had Kain at your mercy, but lacked the courage to fulfill the act. And now you see the wasteland wrought by the tyrant's hand, by his selfish decision to preserve his own life, even when it meant sacrificing the whole world. This is the fate of Nosgoth, as long as Kain remains alive.
An ironic condemnation, given this guilty scene. One would think you'd torn down the pillars single-handedly. What are you trying to obliterate as you drag your loathsome body through this chamber? And why, as Nosgoth descends into madness and misery, do you appear to thrive? Things in this world, I am learning, are rarely what they seem. You, apparently, are no exception.
I am the engine of life, the source of Nosgoth's very existence. I am the hub of the wheel, the origin of all life, the devourer of death.
Or maybe you're just hungry. Could it be as simple as that? Wouldn't that be poetic irony? The great adversary of the vampires turns out to be the biggest parasite of them all.
Do not test my patience, Raziel. I made you, and I will unmake you if I become so inclined.
As your agent, I am beyond death.
There are fates worse than death, Raziel.
Oh, I see you now as you truly are. A cancer. A spooling parasite burrowed deep in the heart of this world.
Go now. Play out your pitiful rebellion and take your place among the destroyed, the used, and the damned. But know this. You are mine for eternity. You have always been, and will always be, my soul Reaver. Your destiny beckons.
Beyond this edifice lay my sole hope of escaping this demon-infested wasteland. The time-streaming device contained therein offered my only prospect of journeying back into Nosgoth's early history. Unless I discovered some means of breaking the seal, I was condemned to be stranded here eternally. The passage of time had indeed cleared my way forward, enabling me to explore the northern mountains of Nosgoth. I was anxious to discover if some evidence of Janos Audron's existence might still remain. Here I discovered the quaint hamlet of Ushtenheim, now long abandoned and collapsing into ruin. Legend claimed that Janos Ordren terrorized its villagers until the Sarafan hunters ferreted him out and destroyed him. If there was any truth to the old tales, the lair of the infamous vampire would not be far away. This edifice was clearly not crafted by human architects. As the figure beneath the balcony silently attested, these were the aeries of winged beings. Undoubtedly, I stood before the mountain refuge of the legendary Janos Ordren, but the entire sanctuary lay in ruin, collapsed under the force of some ancient cataclysm. As I suspected, the time streamer's deception ensured I was centuries too late to unearth anything of consequence here. With nothing behind me but the wasteland I had traversed, I resolved to press on and explore these canyons further. Oh no. Every time you turn up, something monumental and terrible happens. I don't think I have the stomach for it.
No drama this time, Raziel.
You are persistent, crossing time like this to follow me. Still waiting for that coin of yours to land on its edge.
I'm biding my time. I see that Mobius has played a little trick on you.
Yes. He clearly doesn't want me to meet this Janos Ordren.
Perhaps. Or maybe he merely hoped that it would harden your heart against me, to see this wasteland which I single-handedly orphaned.
My heart doesn't need hardening, Kain. If I even suspected that destroying you would make any difference, I would do it this instant.
I knew you'd see through them, Raziel. Janos is indeed the key to your destiny. But you'll need to find your own way back into Nosgoth's path. Make no mistake, though, Raziel. You and I are now in great danger. We are irritants here. Malevolent forces are being marshaled to eliminate us.
You talk as though we're allies.
Regardless of your sentiments, Raziel, in their eyes, we are.
Well, they're certainly trying to eliminate you, Kain. There can be no doubt of that. I am assaulted relentlessly with demands for your demise. Whatever it is that you're plotting, they're scared to death of you. As for me, I suspect they made a grave error when they allowed my unique resurrection. I don't think they know how to destroy me.
You mustn't underestimate them, Raziel.
And who exactly is this diabolical they to which we keep referring? If there's some grand conspiracy going on, the right hand doesn't appear to know what the left is doing. Even Mobius seems to be caught out at every turn.
Mobius is a puppet, Raziel. Haven't you realized that yet? That's the sweetest irony in all of this. Nosgoth's great manipulator is their plaything. But the ones pulling the strings haven't shown their faces yet.
They don't like us unwriting their carefully choreographed history, though, do they?
You must understand, Raziel, we haven't unwritten history, we've merely rewritten. The future flows around our petty actions, finding the path of least resistance, while admitting only the slightest alterations. This is the reshuffling you felt when you refused to kill me. And remember, Raziel, we are irritants in this regard as well. History will not allow the introduction of a paradox.
And if events cannot be reshuffled to accommodate the change?
It is the irritant who's expelled. Bear in mind, this may be exactly the outcome our enemies are trying to provoke. We must tread very carefully.
The scenes I discovered here were unambiguous. This race of winged beings, the architects of the pillars and the creators of the Reaver, were Nosgoth's first vampires. Their bloodthirst appeared to be a curse, inflicted upon them by their vanquished enemies. These images confirmed the truths that Kain had divulged to me, but I had been too incredulous to accept. I struggled in vain to see how the pieces fit together. How Kain intended to escape the dilemma of his destiny, and what role he had plotted for me, and why Mobius and the dark powers with which he seemed to be allied were so desperate to see Kain dead, and so intent on me being the instrument of his execution. As the Reaver drained the forge of its vital energy, the tempest receded. I recovered myself and paused to admire my newly forged weapon, now imbued with the elemental power of air. Thus armed, I hoped that I now finally possess the means to escape this wasted land. This elemental Reaver, I discovered, had the power to obliterate barriers that were cracked or compromised. At last, I had the means to open that ruined time-streaming chamber I discovered so long ago in the swamp. Now, perhaps, I could leave this wasteland and return to an era when Janos Ordrin still lived. No choice but to act purely on blind faith. There was no way to tell what era this device was tuned to, and I had neither the knowledge nor the means to set the machine myself. I hesitated only briefly. Then, throwing the switch, I hurled myself into oblivion and relinquished my will to the hand of fate. Beyond all hope and against all probability, it seemed that the device had unerringly delivered me to the era I sought. For these were Sarafan banners, and these vampires apparently the victims of their crusade. The coincidence seemed too convenient to naively ascribe to fate. But whether my opportune arrival had been orchestrated by Mobius or some other influence, I didn't know. If Janos Ordrin still lived, I would find him. But I was wary of further deception, and resolved to tread carefully. For all the butchery of Mobius's crusade, this massacre was somehow more chilling. The killing fields of the Sarafan betrayed a kind of orderly ruthlessness, the cold-blooded righteousness of the true believer.
By all that is holy!
Here at last, in the flesh, I beheld my former brothers in arms, the warrior priests of the Sarafan Order, their lives devoted solely to the annihilation of the vampire plague. And while I confess, I felt a twinge of longing, a pang of grief for what I had believed was my lost virtue, I regarded them now with none of the reverence I formerly felt. For I had seen the human face of the vampires, and now I beheld the monstrousness of these men. After my long journey, I finally stood on the threshold of enlightenment. For here was Janos Audrin's mountain retreat, intact and unblemished. The upheaval that would one day topple this ancient edifice had not yet occurred. And while I had no certainty that Janos still lived, this scene boded well, for I presumed that the collapse of the retreat must have followed the ancient vampire's demise. There was only one obstacle. How to reach the balcony suspended at that maddening height, so far beyond my reach. For this was the architecture of winged creatures. The tattered ruins of my wings were of no use. I would need to devise some other means into that mountain. The mountain's interior was hollow, I discovered, and graced with soaring architecture unique to its creators. As with the outer facade, these balconies and galleries could only be reached by those gifted with flight. With only my ruined wings to carry me, this towering labyrinth seemed impassable. The object of my quest lay just beyond my grasp. For here, suspended at the apex of the chamber, was the threshold that surely led to the great vampire himself. I didn't know whether Janos Audrin was the monster depicted in the stronghold, or one of the noble creatures memorialized among the ruins of the ancient vampires. And I didn't care. Demon or angel, he alone held the key to my destiny. Janos Audrin?
It is heartening after all these years to hear my name spoken without contempt. Raziel? My child, what have they done to you?
I have been dragged through hell and back. All it seems to reach this moment. But I don't yet know why.
For thousands of years I have waited, alone here, losing faith. At the time of the binding, 9 guardians were called to serve the pillars, and I was summoned as the 10th guardian, the keeper of the Reaver, the weapon of our salvation. Over time, our race died out, until I alone remained, sustained only by my obligation to you and by my guardianship of the blade.
And the other 9? Why did their guardianship not sustain them?
I don't know. As our race dwindled, the humans prospered. I have watched over the centuries as our history faded into myth and finally receded altogether. The humans have forgotten us entirely and claimed the pillars for themselves, wholly ignorant of their true purpose. To them, I am merely a devil, the origin of their vampire plague.
Why would the pillars summon human guardians then, if they are meant to be served by vampires?
The pillars choose their guardians from birth, Raziel, and vampires are no longer born. This is the crux of our dilemma, and this is the terrible irony. With their vampire purge, the members of the Circle have assaulted the very architects of the pillars they are sworn to protect. They have embarked on a treacherous path. With every vampire they kill, the humans are slitting their own throats. They know I'm up here, beyond their reach, and it terrifies them. You can see how they flaunt their kills to torment me, or perhaps simply to lure me out. They have this foolish notion that destroying me will somehow topple our entire bloodline. Thankfully, we're not that fragile.
I've seen them mustering their forces in the village below.
Yes. I don't know what they're plotting, but I fear our time may be bitterly short.
Mankind seems to have brought you only torment and grief. You must hate them.
They fear what they don't understand, and they despise what they fear. But no, I do not hate them.
Vorador does.
He has suffered much. He cannot forgive them.
Should they be forgiven?
They don't understand what they're doing. They are simply unenlightened and vulnerable to manipulation.
So, it's all true then, what Kain and Vorador have told me. I really am some kind of unholy vampire messiah.
Unholy? No. Messiah, perhaps.
I don't like that word. It smells of martyrdom.
Raziel, your role in this world's destiny is more crucial and more benevolent than you've allowed yourself to believe. Your journey will not be easy. Dark powers are allied against you. But I think you already know this. You appear to have been cruelly tested. The binding must be secured, Raziel. The pillars are the lock.
And the Reaver is the key.
Yes.
The Reaver is here. Why do I feel nothing?
The most formidable weapon ever forged by our swordsmiths. They infused the blade with vampiric energy, empowering the Reaver to drain our enemies of their precious lifeblood.
As Janos presented the blade, an inexplicable sense of dread crept over me, more palpable than anything I'd felt before. I I was at once horribly repelled by the sword, and yet irresistibly compelled to touch it, to take it up. Please, take it away from me.
I fear you have been followed. You must save yourself, Raziel.
Janos! No! My surroundings whirled sickeningly, and I found myself transported safely away from the ambush to an adjacent chamber. Janos had delivered me from the Sarafan, selflessly forfeiting his own safety to preserve my life. And now I feared that my newfound mentor would be slaughtered by the very crusaders I had so recently revered. The irony pierced me, and with dawning horror, I realized that I had been duped by Mobius from the beginning. For the Sarafan had simply followed the path I gullibly blazed through this sanctuary, and had arrived bearing Mobius' staff. Thus armed, they had Janos at their mercy. Through the door, I could hear them battling, less than a dozen paces away. But it may as well have been 1,000 miles, for this barrier was sealed by elemental forces I did not possess. It seemed Janos had conveyed me into the heart of the fire shrine. I thought perhaps if I could galvanize the forge and imbue the Reaver in time, I might have a slim chance of saving Janos from his grisly fate. plunged the Reaver into that furnace and forged the blade with elemental fire. With the Reaver thus imbued, I was now armed to unlock the elemental barrier and rescue Janos from his executioners.
Look at his black heart! How it still beats!
The Fiend intends to bury us alive! Raziel, we must get out of here!
Remember the sword!
Forgive me. I'm sorry. I failed you.
No, Razia. Perhaps this was my true purpose. Simply to save your life this once.
While I have taken yours.
Embrace your destiny, Razia. You must reclaim the Reaver. It was forged for you and you alone. Without it, there is no hope.
As I backed away from Janos's body, I was overwhelmed by a sense of self-loathing so deep I could barely contain it. In that instant, I rejected all that I ever was, and embraced the role Janos had safeguarded for me so patiently throughout the centuries. I knew then what I had to do, the task for which I was uniquely prepared. I would pursue the Sarafan dogs to their loathsome fortress and avenge Janos Audrin's murder. Mobius would pay dearly for his treachery, and my Sarafan brethren would reap the horrors they had sown. I would retake the stolen Reaver, which was rightfully mine. And finally, when all these debts had been paid, I would reclaim Janos Audrin's heart from their filthy, unworthy hands. If the heart was truly imbued with the power to restore vampiric unlife, its highest purpose was clear to me. I would restore the heart to Janos, and thus undo the vile crime committed by my abominable former self. So, these demonic pests were not merely the product of Nosgoth's corrupted future, for here they were, hurtling back over 5 centuries to pursue me. These creatures, I suspected, were minions of the unseen forces that had hoped to control me. This was the tangible expression of their displeasure. These demons were unleashed as the penalty for my disobedience.
Nosgoth. Let me enlighten you, poor Raziel.
The savior of Nosgoth.
There's another one! Get him! Over there!
Shall not pass. You have failed me, Raziel.
I wonder, Old One. Did you truly resurrect me, or were you simply there when I awakened from my torment in the abyss? I suspect you found me merely convenient, dropped in your lair by Kain, indestructible for some reason, a durable and gullible tool for you to manipulate. This one thing I readily admit. I have been used by others time and again, but always I seem to stray from their path. What is it about me, demon, that makes me such an unreliable instrument? Why do I survive one trial after another, on and on, in an endless succession of humiliating deaths and resurrections? It seems there is much more to my destiny and my history than I know. Perhaps more than you know as well. Inexplicably, I discovered the Reaver suspiciously laid across my path. Again, I sensed nothing of that temporal distortion, the peculiar sense of displacement I had felt when I encountered the Reaver in William's chapel. Cornered here with the blade, I suffered the same nameless dread that I had experienced when Janos first presented the Reaver to me. I felt at once repelled by the blade, and yet overwhelmingly compelled to seize it.
So, Raziel, here we are, finally. You have no choice but to confront me now, and I am not so foolish as I've let you believe. We have business to conclude.
You knew I would lead the Seraphim to Janos, you vile bastard. You've been orchestrating my every move. My destiny is an amusement to you.
It was fun while it lasted. I think not, Raziel. Malik, do not let this creature leave. He poses a danger to the Circle. Poor, deluded Raziel. Did you somehow imagine you had the guile to change history on me? I'm the Time Streamer. I knew your every intention before you did, you imbecile.
Oh,
Lord Mobius, there is trouble within. The Circle is under
Hold
attack.
fast, Malik. This one is the real danger to us.
What are you trying to concoct here, Mobius?
You toxic creature. Did you imagine I'd simply allow you to run loose, corrupting everything you encounter?
I admit that I've underestimated you to this point, Mobius. But it's a mistake I won't repeat.
Wrong again, Raziel. Now, Malik, bolt the door.
Using his staff to disable my Wraithblade, Mobius effectively disarmed me, leaving me with only one choice of weapon. And yet I confess, it was not the lack of options, but blind rage that made me take up the Reaver. In my fury, it felt as though my hand had acted of its own will. And now, that same hand clutched the hilt with unyielding strength, and I felt a constrained tingling, a remote but palpable sense of longing, as the disabled Wraithblade tried vainly to embrace its physical twin. Now that I had taken it up, the Reaver and I were inescapably joined. The harder I tried to release the blade, the more tightly my hand gripped the hilt, as if possessed of its own will.
Come to take your revenge, demon?
Back to hell with you!
I recognize these two as my former brethren, in life as Sarafan, and in unlife as Kain's vampire sons. Melchiah and Zephon, the weakest of Kain's brood. These bastards had no idea what future lay in store for them, how they would become the very thing they so despised. The Reaver hummed with ravenous anticipation. Janos had called it a vampiric blade, endowed with the power to drain its victims of their lifeblood. I was eager to see what the Reaver would do to these two. As Melchiah and Zephon fell before my blade, I felt the Reaver's bloodlust as keenly as I ever had when I was still a vampire. I could sense the boundary between us dissolving. The Reaver was consumed with my rage, and I was intoxicated by its bloodlust. The blade had a vitalizing effect on me. My physical energy no longer decayed over time, and the wounds inflicted by my foes healed almost instantly. The Reaver had made me invincible. The Reaver exerted some mysterious power over me. It sustained my energy, enabling me to prolong my physical manifestation indefinitely. In fact, bonded to the blade as I was, I could no longer shift into the spirit realm at will. Nor was I able to summon the Reaver's twin, for my Wraithblade had been disabled in the confrontation with Mobius.
Have you come to reclaim the monster's black heart?
You'll have to get through us first.
My former brethren, Duma and Rahab, confronted me next. This all seemed so elegantly choreographed. Exhilarated by the Reaver, I was drunk with revelations. I could finally appreciate the delicious irony of Kain's blasphemous private joke, and I reveled as I colluded with him across the centuries. For it was I who put these bastards in their tomb, thus providing the corpses for Kain to raise as his vampire sons a millennium from now.
Get back to the pit you crawled from, demon.
And here at last was my brother Tyrell, who along with Duma would bear me into the abyss without questioning Kain's command. So beautiful and righteous, even as a vampire. I guess some have its style. The vampire Tyrell had eluded my vengeance. The Sarafat Tyrell would not. So, vampire, here we are. You've destroyed my brethren, and now you've come for me. You'll find I'm not such easy prey. I don't want to kill you, but I will if I must. Return the heart to me, and we can end this now. So, you've come to avenge that filthy parasite and reclaim his foul heart. You're a righteous fiend, aren't you? Apparently I am. No, vampire. This is where it ends. But you won't be leaving this room. Now, let's finish this. I'll make it mercifully quick. As you did for Janos? No, that beast had eluded us for far too long. It would have been a shame to end him too quickly. It's ironic, really. The great Janos Ordrin turned out to be no challenge at all. Thanks to you. Did you hear his cowardly screams when I tore that black heart out of his carcass? I renounce you. And so it ends. My history comes full circle. Sensing its twin, the Wraithblade uncoiled itself from me, and instead wound lovingly around its former self. I felt its grip loosen, and as the blade left me, its absence chilled me more than its presence ever had. A foreboding sense of emptiness and loss stole over me, and a terrible revelation gathered like a storm at the edge of my awareness. With all other foes exhausted, the conjoined blades turned themselves on me, and I realized, finally, why I had sensed nothing when Janos offered me the blade. The Reaver was never forged to be a soul-stealing weapon. The ravenous, soul-devouring entity trapped in the blade was, and always had been, me. This is why the blade was destroyed when Kain tried to strike me down. The Reaver could not devour its own soul. The paradox shattered the blade. So, this was my terrible destiny. To play out this purgatorial cycle for all eternity. I could not bear it. Despair overwhelmed me. You. Are you enjoying this game? Don't fight it, Raziel. Give into it. Was this your destiny for me all along? Trust me. I felt myself weakening, unable to hold on any longer. The Reaver was too strong. The compulsion to simply let go, too great. And then, a growing sense of vertigo and the familiar displacement. The paradoxical moment when my twinned soul hovered both outside and inside the Reaver blade. This was the instant, the glimmer of temporal distortion Kain had been counting on all along. This was the edge of the coin, the minute flicker of probability upon which Kain had gambled everything.
Now you are free to reclaim your true destiny, Raziel.
Behind Kain's eyes, I could see new memories blooming and dying as history labored to reshuffle itself around this monumental obstruction. And I could see by the dawning horror on his face that perhaps we had strained history too far this time. That by trying to alter my fate, he may have introduced a fatal paradox.
My God. The Hilden. We walked right into their trap. Raziel, Janos must stay dead.
But Kain's warning was lost as I slipped into the spirit realm, too weak to maintain my physical form. And there, waiting for me as always, was the Reaver, the Wraithblade, my own soul, twinned and bound eternally to me. And I realized that I could never escape my terrible destiny. I had merely postponed it. History abhors a paradox.